Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is listening to this episode instead of doing the one thing they were supposed to do today. And if that person is you, welcome. You are exactly who this episode is for. Hey everyone, welcome back to English Rewired. Today we are talking about something every single one of us knows a little too well: procrastination. Why we do it, what is actually happening in our brains when we do it, and a few small, simple tricks that really can help. Let's get into it. Here is a strange fact to start with. Procrastination has almost nothing to do with time management. You would think the fix is simple. Get a better planner, wake up earlier, block out your calendar. But if you have tried all of that and still found yourself scrolling through your phone at midnight instead of finishing the report, you already know the truth. The planner was never the problem. What is actually happening is something researchers call mood repair. When a task makes you feel anxious or bored or unsure of yourself, your brain looks for the fastest way out of that feeling. And scrolling your phone, or suddenly deciding to clean your kitchen, or reorganizing your desk for the third time this week, these things work incredibly well. For about 10 minutes, the bad feeling disappears completely. The only catch is that the task is still sitting there waiting for you when you look up again, except now it comes with a little extra weight attached to it, which is guilt. So if procrastination is not really about laziness, what is it about? I like to think of it as a small, nervous part of yourself that I call the gremlin. This gremlin is not trying to destroy your life, it is not evil. It is just deeply uncomfortable with difficult feelings, and its only tool for dealing with discomfort is escape. Close the laptop, open something easier, feel better immediately. The gremlin is not your enemy, it is more like a teammate with genuinely terrible instincts. And once you understand that, you stop trying to hate it into silence and you start trying to work around it instead. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is your phone. If you have ever opened an app for just 1 minute and somehow found yourself still scrolling 40 minutes later, please do not blame yourself too harshly. These apps are built by extremely smart people whose entire job is to make it difficult for you to stop. Endless scrolling, autoplay videos, little red notification dots. Every single one of these design choices exists to remove any natural moment where you might think, okay, this is enough, time to do something else. A newspaper ends, a video feed never does. That is not an accident. So here is the useful idea. You cannot out-discipline a team of engineers whose whole career is built around keeping your attention. Willpower runs out by lunchtime. But friction does not get tired. Friction works for you even while you are asleep. So instead of relying on willpower, try adding small annoying obstacles between yourself and your favorite distraction. Turn your screen to grayscale so it becomes less visually exciting. Log out of the app instead of just closing it, so opening it again requires typing a password. Charge your phone in a different room overnight, not just on silent next to your pillow, but actually somewhere else. None of these tricks require superhuman self-control. They just make the easy choice slightly less easy, which turns out to be enough. While we are on the subject of phones and distractions, let's talk for a moment about your environment in general, because this might be the single most underrated tool in this entire episode. Most of what looks like a discipline problem is actually a design problem. If your guitar is packed away in its case inside a closet, you probably will not practice no matter how much you genuinely love music. But if that same guitar is sitting out on a stand right next to your couch, you will often pick it up without even consciously deciding to. Your environment quietly makes decisions before you do every single day, whether you notice it or not. And this works in the opposite direction too. If your game console is already set up and glowing in the middle of your living room, it will win by default almost every time. So try this. Look at your desk right now, today, and notice the very first thing your eyes land on. Make that thing your priority task, not a pile of random clutter. Look at your phone's home screen and notice what is only one tap away. Move the most tempting apps into a folder buried on a second or third page. Redesign your space once, on a good day when you have energy and patience, so that your worst, most tired day does not have to fight against it later. Let's talk about something else, which is this popular idea that some people simply work better under pressure. Maybe you have said this about yourself: I do my best work the night before it is due. But here is the honest version of that story. You did not do your best work under pressure. You did the only work that was possible in that amount of time, and your brain is now confusing survival with excellence. When you are in a full panic, your thinking actually gets worse, not better. Your options narrow. You grab the very first idea that seems workable instead of taking time to find a genuinely good one. That all-nighter essay was not your best work. It was your only available work, produced at the highest possible cost. The real lesson hiding inside this pattern is that you respond well to urgency. So instead of waiting for a real deadline to create panic at the last possible moment, you can create urgency earlier, on your own terms, while you still have a clear head to actually do good work. Set yourself a fake deadline that is 2 days earlier than the real one, and tell somebody about it. Book an actual appointment, a call, a co-working session with a friend, anything that forces an early version of the work to exist by a certain time. Borrow the urgency on purpose instead of waiting for the emergency to arrive on its own. Now, here is something that might explain a lot. Your brain has a part that reacts to threats extremely quickly, faster than your logical thinking can keep up. And this part of your brain is not very good at telling the difference between an actual physical danger and an email that might make you look bad in front of your boss. Both register, on some level, as a threat. And when your brain senses a threat, its first instinct is simply to leave. This is why logic almost never wins in that moment. You can know perfectly well that writing the email will only take 10 minutes and will not hurt you. Knowing that does not matter, because the part of you steering the car in that moment is not the part that knows it. So trying to argue your way past this feeling almost never works. What actually helps is calming your body down first, before you try to reason with yourself. Take 5 slow breaths, and make the exhale longer than the inhale. This genuinely signals to your nervous system that there is no danger here. Say the feeling out loud, something as simple as, I am nervous about this phone call. Naming an emotion out loud measurably reduces its grip on you, and then shrink the task down until it stops feeling like a threat at all. Not write the whole report, just open the document. Not clean the entire house, just pick up 5 things. This brings us to one of my favorite tricks, something often called the 2-minute rule. If the full task feels impossible to start, you commit to just 2 minutes of it. Not the whole workout, just putting on your shoes. Not the entire assignment, just writing 1 single sentence. This works because your resistance is usually about the size of the task, not the task itself. Shrink it down small enough, and the resistance often shrinks right along with it. And here is the secret. Most of the time, once you get moving for those 2 minutes, you keep going far longer than you expected. But even on the days when 2 minutes really is all you get, that is still a win, because it keeps the habit of starting alive, which matters more than any single session ever could. Let's also talk quickly about sorting your tasks, because not everything on your to-do list deserves the same amount of dread. Some tasks are what I like to call frogs, meaning they are unpleasant but genuinely important, and they only get heavier the longer you leave them sitting there. Other tasks are just flies, small and annoying but low stakes, the kind of thing you can batch together into one short block of time so they stop nibbling at your attention all day long. And some tasks are honestly just ghosts. Things that feel urgent but really are not that important if you are being completely honest with yourself. Learning to tell these apart saves you an enormous amount of energy, because willpower is highest early in the day and slowly gets used up through every small decision you make. So eating your frog first, before checking your phone or answering emails, tends to work far better than saving it for later. Here's something worth mentioning too, and it might be the most important idea in this whole episode. Perfectionism often disguises itself as high standards, when really it is just fear wearing a nicer outfit. Nobody procrastinates on something they do not care about at all. The paralysis usually shows up exactly where you care the most. If your personal rule is that something has to be good before you are allowed to start, you have accidentally built a rule that guarantees you will never start because nothing is good before it exists. Only the fourth draft can be excellent. You cannot get to a fourth draft without surviving a rough, embarrassing first one. So give yourself full permission to write something bad on purpose. Set a timer that is deliberately too short for the work to be polished. Replace the question, "Is this right?" with the much smaller question, "Is this a start?" Now here's something that might feel a little uncomfortable to admit, but it is worth saying clearly. Being harsh with yourself after you procrastinate almost never helps, and in fact it usually makes things worse. It feels logical that beating yourself up should motivate you to do better tomorrow, but the research on this actually points in the opposite direction. Criticizing yourself after procrastinating tends to raise your stress levels, and raised stress is exactly the kind of feeling that pushes you toward procrastinating again in the first place, so it becomes a loop. You avoid the task, you feel guilty, the guilt creates more stress, and the stress makes the next task even harder to face. The people who procrastinate the least are not usually the ones who punish themselves the hardest. They tend to be the ones who forgive themselves quickly and simply return to the task with a relatively clean emotional slate. If you want an accountability partner to help with this, choose someone who checks in on your progress with curiosity, not someone who only reacts when you fail. And when you talk to yourself internally, try asking what got in the way this time, and what you might adjust next time instead of demanding to know what is wrong with you. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to a close friend who just admitted they procrastinated. You would never open with a lecture. Do not do that to yourself either. One more idea before we wrap up, and it is about habits. If you want a new behavior to actually stick, do not rely on remembering to do it. Attach it directly to something you already do every single day without fail. After I pour my morning coffee, I will write down my one most important task for the day. After I sit down at my desk, I will close every browser tab except the one I am actually working on. The old habit becomes the reminder for the new one, so you are not depending on motivation or memory at all. And finally, when you do finish something, even something small, please take a real moment to notice it. Most of us cross a finish line and immediately jump to the next task without ever registering that we just did something hard. That tiny pause matters more than it seems. It teaches your brain that starting things is survivable and that finishing actually feels good, which makes it a little bit easier to start again next time. So here is the honest, no shame version of everything we just talked about. You are not lazy and you are not broken. You have a brain that occasionally avoids uncomfortable feelings by escaping into something easier, and that is simply what nearly every human brain does, including the brains of people who look, from the outside, incredibly organized and disciplined. The fix is not becoming a completely different person who never procrastinates again, because that person does not actually exist anywhere, no matter how convincing their morning routine video looks online. The fix is understanding your own gremlin a little better, shrinking your tasks down to something manageable, adding a bit of friction to your worst distractions, redesigning your space so the easy choice and the right choice sit closer together, and forgiving yourself quickly enough to actually get back to work. If this episode helped you understand your own habits a little better, or if you just enjoyed hanging out with us today, do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button on English Rewired. It genuinely helps the channel grow, and it means we get to keep making episodes exactly like this one for you. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. Now go close this app and go do the 2-minute version of whatever you have been avoiding. We will see you in the next episode.